Do you know that tightness in your chest when someone leaves you hanging? That feeling of screaming in the desert while silence returns as the only answer? If you've ever felt that, you're not alone. The uncomfortable truth is that most of us spend our entire lives building sandcastles on the beach of others' validation, only to watch the waves of indifference wash everything away. And here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't the silence of others. It's the roar of your own insecurity echoing in that void. For centuries, Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus mastered the art of transforming vulnerability into unshakable strength. They understood something revolutionary. Your inner peace cannot depend on external factors that you will never control. While you desperately seek a good morning back, an extra like, or any crumb of attention, you are handing over the keys to your happiness to people who barely know where to keep them. What if I told you there is a path where you become so complete, so whole, that the indifference of others simply loses the power to shake you? In this content, we will dismantle, brick by brick, the invisible prison of the need for approval. You will discover why seeking external validation is like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much you receive, it will never be enough. More importantly, you will learn 5 practical and profound principles that the Stoics used to cultivate rejection-proof self-esteem, build healthy relationships based on conscious detachment, and develop communication so powerful that your words and your silences will carry more value than 1,000 desperate messages. Prepare to discover that your greatest strength has always been where you least expected it, within yourself. Lesson 1. Silence as a mirror of one's own insecurity. Have you ever noticed how someone's silence can scream louder than 1,000 words? It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. When we send that message and it goes unanswered for hours, our minds turn into a theater of Greek tragedies. Did I say something wrong? Do they not like me anymore? Did I do something wrong? The truth is that silence in itself is neutral, like a blank canvas. It is we who take the brush of insecurity and paint our worst nightmares on it. The Stoics already knew this millennia ago. The problem is never in what happens, but in the interpretation we give to what happens. When someone doesn't respond, it's not necessarily about you. It could be about 1,000 things that have nothing to do with your existence. Perhaps that person is immersed in their own dilemmas, fighting their own internal battles. But our insecurity transforms every silence into a personal judgment, as if the entire universe were conspiring to reject us. This tendency to fill the void with our own needs has a name: emotional confirmation bias. It's as if we carry an invisible backpack full of unhealed wounds, and every time someone takes a long time to respond, we open that backpack and dump all its contents on the situation. See? I always knew I wasn't important. This narrative feeds on itself, creating a vicious cycle where we seek validation precisely because we feel invalidated. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and Stoic philosopher, wrote something revolutionary in his Meditations. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The other person's silence is an external event. Your reaction to it? That is under your control. When you send a message and obsessively check if it has been seen, you are handing over your power, your peace, and your self-esteem to someone who may not even have realized how much it meant to you. It's like putting your happiness in the hands of a stranger and then complaining that they dropped it. Here's the radical invitation Stoicism makes to us. What if the silence wasn't about you? What if it was just silence? Nothing more, nothing less. Think of it as an experiment. The next time someone takes a long time to respond, instead of creating catastrophic stories, practice detachment from the narrative. Ask yourself, what concrete evidence do I have that this is rejection? Usually the answer is none. We are reacting to phantoms created by our own minds. Seneca, another great Stoic, said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. How many nights have you lost sleep because of a silence that, the next day, turned out to be a dead phone battery or simply a busy day? The practice here is simple but not easy. Observe the silence without judging it. Acknowledge your anxiety, but don't let it hijack you. Tell yourself, this could mean 1,000 things. I choose not to torture myself with assumptions. This is the first step in transforming insecurity into strength, realizing that you are projecting your wounds onto neutral situations. Lesson 2. Self-esteem independent of external validation. Self-esteem built on the validation of others is like a house built on quicksand. It seems solid when people are applauding you, but it crumbles the instant the approval ceases. And here's the problem. It will always cease. Always. Not because people are bad or because you're unworthy, but because no one can be responsible for sustaining another person's emotional structure 24/7. It's an impossible weight to bear. When you wake up in the morning and your first action is to check how many likes your photo from yesterday got, you've just handed control of your self-esteem over to algorithms and strangers who may not even remember you in 5 minutes. The Stoics called this putting what is internal in the hands of what is external, a fatal philosophical error. Epictetus, who was a slave before becoming one of history's greatest philosophers, taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Your reaction, your opinion of yourself, no one can take that away from you, unless you hand it over on a silver platter. Building genuine self-esteem begins with a radical shift in questioning. Instead of, "What will they think of me?" ask, "Does this reflect my values?" Instead of, "How can I please them?" ask, "Does this honor me?" It sounds simple, but it's a silent revolution. Imagine you're considering sharing an achievement on social media. The question of insecurity would be, will they think it's cool? Will they judge me? The question of solid self-esteem would be, am I proud of this regardless of the reaction? If the answer is yes, share it. If it's no, don't share it. It's that simple. You are anchored in your own worth, not in the waves of others' opinions. Napoleon Hill, in Think and Grow Rich, talks about the power of self-suggestion, repeating truths to yourself until your subconscious mind accepts them. Try this every day. When you wake up, look in the mirror and say, "My worth doesn't depend on anyone. I am complete as I am." Sounds silly? Maybe, but it works. Your brain begins to create new neural pathways based on this repeated truth. The goal isn't to become an isolated island, incapable of caring about what others think. That would be psychopathy, not stoicism. The objective is to create an internal hierarchy where your own opinion of yourself occupies the top spot, unshakable. The opinions of others? They can be interesting, sometimes useful, but never definitive. Think of people you admire, those who radiate genuine confidence. Notice that they aren't constantly seeking approval. Not because they don't care about anyone, but because they already have the approval that truly matters. Their own. When someone criticizes you, instead of crumbling, you can think, interesting perspective. Is there something here I can learn? If so, great. If not, discard it and move on. That's true freedom. Seneca wrote, "If you live according to nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to opinions, you will never be rich." In other words, you can have millions of followers and still feel empty if your self-esteem depends on likes. Or you can have 3 true friends and feel complete because your worth comes from within. The choice, as always, is yours. Lesson 3. Emotional detachment without losing your humanity. There's a dangerous confusion between detachment and emotional coldness. We're not talking about becoming a robot incapable of feeling, but about loving without the chain of despair tied to your ankle. Intense attachment, the kind that suffocates, controls, and demands, that kind of attachment is actually fear masked as love. It's the fear of losing, of not being enough, of being alone, all disguised as care. When you love someone desperately, you're not loving, you're clinging. And no one flourishes when they're being squeezed so tightly. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't preach indifference, but equanimity. The difference? Indifference is not caring. Equanimity is caring deeply, but without losing your inner peace in the process. Marcus Aurelius loved his wife and children, but he knew that, in the end, everything is temporary. This awareness didn't make him less loving. It made him more present, more grateful for every moment he had with them. Practicing detachment means acknowledging an uncomfortable truth. You don't control people. Not even a little. You can offer your best, you can be the most amazing person in the world, and still someone can choose to walk away. And that's not about you. It's about their free will, about their own internal processes, about 1,000 variables you will never control. When you understand this at a cellular level, something magical happens. You stop trying to hold on to people tightly and start inviting them to stay. The difference is subtle but monumental. Holding on tightly is saying, "I need you. I can't live without you. Please don't go away." Inviting is saying, "I am whole even alone, but your presence makes my life richer. If you choose to stay, wonderful. If you choose to leave, I will miss you, but I will be okay." Do you feel the difference? In the second case, you are offering love from abundance, not from neediness. And people feel that. They feel free by your side, not trapped. And ironically, that's what makes many choose to stay. But how do you develop this detachment in practice? Start with mental exercises. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, negative visualization. Not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. Take an important relationship in your life. Now, honestly imagine, what if this person decided to leave my life tomorrow? Feel the discomfort of this question. Don't run from it. Now ask, would I survive? Would I be able to rebuild? The honest answer is yes. Would it be painful? Absolutely. But you would survive. You are stronger than you imagine. This practice is not to create paranoia, but to remove the terror of the unknown. When you mentally rehearse the loss, fear loses its power. You begin to value people's presence more while they are here, because you know that everything is temporary. And paradoxically, this awareness of impermanence makes your love purer, because it ceases to be neurotic attachment and becomes genuine gratitude. You love not because you need to, but because you choose to. And that is the most beautiful and healthy way to love that exists. Lesson 4. Conscious and wise communication. Most relationships don't die from a lack of love, but from a lack of conscious communication. How many arguments have you had that, in retrospect, were completely unnecessary? How many words have you thrown like grenades, only to later realize you destroyed bridges that took years to build? The problem is rarely what we say, but how we say it. And even more importantly, when we say it. The Stoics were masters of the art of measured response. They understood that between the stimulus, something someone says or does to you, and your response, there is a space. A small interval where you choose. Insecure people react impulsively, letting their emotions take the wheel. People with emotional intelligence pause in this space and consciously choose how to respond. This pause is not weakness, it's mastery. It's the difference between a trained warrior and a drunk in a bar fight. Both may be strong, but only one has control over their strength. Think about the last time you responded to something in the heat of the moment and regretted it later. You were probably hijacked by the amygdala, the primitive part of the brain responsible for survival. When we feel attacked, our brain doesn't distinguish between criticism and a saber-toothed tiger. The response is the same, fight or flight. But here's the problem. Not every conversation is a battle. In fact, most aren't. Conscious communication begins when you realize you're emotionally charged and choose not to respond immediately. Try this technique. When someone says something that irritates you, count to 10 before responding. Literally. 1, 2, 3, up to 10. Take 3 deep breaths. Now respond. You'll notice that your response will be completely different from the one you would give impulsively. It will be measured, clear, and effective. Seneca said, "Anger is a form of temporary madness." When you respond in anger, it's not you speaking, it's an uncontrolled, childish version of yourself. And that version rarely solves problems. It creates them. But wise communication isn't just about controlling negative impulses. It's also about knowing when silence is more powerful than any word. Not every provocation deserves a response. Not every criticism needs a defense. Sometimes, dignified silence communicates more strength than 1,000 arguments. Imagine someone sends you a message clearly trying to provoke you, to make you react emotionally. The insecure response would be to engage, to fight back, to prove your point. The Stoic response? Silence. Not because you're too weak to respond, but because you're too strong to stoop to their level. You understood that this person is seeking validation through your reaction, and you simply choose not to feed that cycle. This completely disorients those who are used to seeing you reactive. Suddenly, you've become unpredictable, centered, strong. And that changes the whole dynamic. People start treating you with more respect, not because you shouted louder, but because you stood firm in your own worth without needing to prove anything to anyone. Lesson 5. Inner purpose as the source of fulfillment. Ultimately, all this desperate search for external validation points to an inner void that hasn't been filled. When you don't know who you are, what your purpose is, what you truly value, you become a leaf in the wind, going wherever the approval of others blows. Today you are this because so-and-so approved. Tomorrow you are that because so-and-so praised you. You become an emotional chameleon, constantly changing color, but never feeling at home in your own skin. Purpose isn't something you find in motivational speeches or Instagram catchphrases. It's born from silence, from deep reflection on who you are when no one is watching. The Stoics practiced something we now call journaling, daily reflective writing. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor in the world at the time, wrote to himself every night. Not to publish, not to impress, but to know himself. He asked, "Did I live according to my values today? Was I the person I want to be?" Finding your purpose begins with uncomfortable questions. What would you do if no one ever knew? If there were no applause, recognition, likes, nothing, would you still do it? If the answer is yes, you've found something genuine. If it's no, you're chasing validation disguised as purpose. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you love to write, but you're ashamed to share because you think you're not good enough. The purpose question would be, does writing fulfill me even when no one reads it? If yes, write every day. Not to publish, not to be famous, but because it's part of who you are. Napoleon Hill spoke of the burning desire. That thing that gets you out of bed even on the hardest days. When you find that the indifference of others completely loses its power over you. Because you're no longer seeking external fuel. You've found the source within yourself, and it's inexhaustible. A life guided by purpose is radically different from a life guided by validation. In the latter, you are always at the mercy of others' moods, always anxious, always trying to please. In the former, you wake up knowing exactly why you are here. It can be something grand like changing the world or something simple like being a good father, a good friend, someone who leaves places better than they found them. The size doesn't matter. What matters is authenticity. When you live with integrity, when your actions reflect your values even when no one is applauding, something extraordinary happens. You become unshakable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you have an inner anchor. The storms of others' opinions may rage outside, but you remain firm. And this firmness? It's magnetic. The right people begin to gravitate toward you, not because you are begging for attention, but because you radiate something they secretly desire. Authenticity, purpose, inner peace. The irony is that when you stop desperately seeking validation, you naturally attract genuine respect. So, where are you on this journey? Still a hostage to the silence of others, or beginning to build your inner fortress? The truth is, transforming insecurity into strength doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily process, sometimes painful, always challenging. But every time you choose not to send that desperate message, every time you observe your anxiety without letting it overwhelm you, every time you act according to your values even without an audience, you are strengthening emotional muscles that many will never develop. And here's the question that really matters. How much longer will you hand over control of your peace to people who don't even know the weight they carry? How much longer will you wait for external permission to value yourself? The Stoics left us a timeless gift. The understanding that we are complete exactly as we are, right now in this moment. Not when we achieve that approval. Not when we are finally noticed. Now, the insecurity you feel, it's not your enemy. It's a teacher showing you exactly where you need to cultivate more self-love, more detachment, more purpose. How about starting today? Choose one of the practices we share here. The exercise of not creating narratives about silence, changing questions to strengthen self-esteem, visualizing detachment, consciously pausing before answering, or reflective writing to discover your purpose. Choose one and practice it for a week. Just 1 week. Observe what changes. And if this content resonated with you, If you feel you're on the path to building that stronger, more centered, freer version of yourself, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have so much more to explore together about how to apply ancient wisdom to modern challenges, about how to transform vulnerability into power, about how to live with integrity in a world obsessed with appearances. You don't have to make this journey alone. We're here, building that inner fortress, brick by brick, day after day. See you in the next piece of content.